Welcome to the Young Turks. Anna Kasparian and Jayar Jackson with you. We have a bonanza.
It's such a crazy day. A bonanza because it's both, isn't it?
Right. Iowa is a nightmare. And this story is developing. By the time we air everything we know, who knows what's gonna break in regard to the Iowa caucuses, but we're gonna give you the latest that we have researched, fact checked, and are able to comfortably share with you, knowing that we have the facts on our side. Later in the show, we'll give you the updates on the impeachment of Donald Trump. He was acquitted. We all know this, but there were some surprising aspects to it that we'll share with you. And then later in the show, in the third hour, we have wonderful interviews for you, including probably the peak of my career, my ability to interview Noam Chomsky. So that will actually happen instead of the post game tonight. It's a pre-recorded interview, but you guys can check that out at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's open to the public. We're not saving it for our members. We want to make sure everyone can see that discussion, so make sure you check that out. So 2 lengthy conversations tonight. It'll be great.
I feel like I heard this years ago. You talked about a Noam Chomsky discussion when I talked. There's certain few people, him and Barbara Walters. That's your next.
Right? Yeah. I grew up a little bit, so I would still love to interview Barbara Walters, but my views on certain things have changed since I was a huge fan of hers. But anyway, I do want to move on and get right to the Iowa updates because this story is outrageous, and this is exactly why people feel demoralized in our electoral system. So let's get to it. There's been more chaos in the Iowa caucuses. First off, as we all know, it took nearly 24 hours for them to release about 62% of the results. We had reported on that. And then an entire day later, they still have yet to release the full results, but they did release a new batch of results from some of the counties, bringing it to 75% of precincts reporting. Now, here's what we know based on the earlier reports of 75% of precincts reporting. Pete Buttigieg had a slight lead when it came to the state delegates, but the important thing to keep in mind is when it comes to pledged delegates, both Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders, according to these faulty results, by the way, and incomplete results, are tied when it comes to pledged delegates. Now, after that, they released 85% of the results, but the Iowa state Democrats tweeted this: there will be a minor correction to the last batch of results, and we will be pushing an update momentarily. So what was that update about? Well, they did release an update, and they said that these are the corrected results, but there's actually a huge problem. And that huge problem is that it appears that in certain precincts, in certain counties, the delegates that were pledged to Bernie Sanders somehow ended up being given to Deval Patrick. I'll give you a specific example, and this is not a conspiracy theory. This is based on a Hawkeye supervisor who went to social media to share this weird inconsistency. So I'm gonna move on to that. So Chris Schwartz, who is the Black Hawk County supervisor, tweeted the following: we have known for over 24 hours, as verified by our county party, that Bernie Sanders won the Iowa caucuses in Black Hawk County with 2,149 votes, 155 county delegates. Now, he also included a screenshot of his post on Facebook about this, and he gets into more details. Now, the state party is now being forced to walk back their error of giving Bernie Sanders delegates to Deval Patrick, who received 0 votes in Black Hawk County. Press can direct message me. Okay, so I have more information on this because it's not just about Black Hawk County. There are other counties showing some inconsistencies, some weird, abnormal results. But this is a huge problem.
Okay, so this has been switched since the first night. The first night there was the delays. You had all the cable outlets, and including us, going, I wonder what's going on. And what we landed on that night was, their system is flawed. They have this new system that's went into place a week even before we even got to the Iowa caucuses. These things were pointed out, and they just have to figure it out. We want to make sure we get it right. That was the first time. Then we get the next day of 62% reporting for a certain percentage of the time. That was again Tuesday. We are now at the end of Wednesday, and we have another batch of a new report of new findings for numbers, and those are wrong.
Right.
So we've gone 2 steps past the original problem of, well, we use this new system, acronym/shadow. We use this new system and it's just not rolling out the best way possible, which was maddening enough for everyone, everyone involved, from people who were perceived to have won this to people like Biden, who looked like he was doing very badly in the state. We've jumped so far that we're not even talking about that anymore because the level of problems that are going on. These mistakes that are happening now have nothing to do with that original problem with these reporting.
That's right.
I mean, with their new system.
Yeah, the new batch of problems has nothing to do with the app, right? So the first problem is the technology, and immediately what you hear from people in the media, from political figures is, oh, Bernie Sanders people, stop with the conspiracy theories, stop with the conspiracy theories. That's all it is. You just sore losers, Pete Buttigieg is up. Okay, but at what point do we acknowledge that the results of this caucus or the caucuses in Iowa have been compromised? Clearly it's been compromised, and luckily you have an actual official, the Black Hawk County supervisor, drawing attention to this, because if there were, let's say, leftist investigative reporters looking into this, they wouldn't be taken seriously. And luckily we have someone in Iowa who's like, hey, what's up with this Deval Patrick situation? He received no votes. Why are we having a conversation about Deval Patrick? These results make no sense.
So I'm sorry, and even if there's not a conspiracy going on, the look of the conspiracy is the first problem you have. So if nothing else, also, so Chris Schwartz, who was a supervisor we just read about, who was tweeting about, he's a supervisor in this area. If you're supervising an election, you have results and information. Each of them did, and they're sitting back going, why aren't our results being given to the people yet? I think there's a bit of an oversight of the fact that other people that are the lower level people underneath the Democratic Iowa Party, they don't want their names to be tainted with this. So he's putting out the information going, you guys aren't gonna get Chris Schwartz wrapped up in this madness. So I'm gonna give you guys the real information and let you guys try and figure this out, because you're not gonna have me be a part of your perceived cover up, at least.
Right. So I'm happy that he spoke out. But Kyle Kulinski made a great point. And this is, even if it's found that there's no malice and these are just genuine mistakes, there's a lot of damage being done right now to people's trust in the system, in their, let's say, drive or motivations to even go out there and vote, because it's demoralizing to see this happen. It's been a few days now since the Iowa caucuses took place, and we still have no idea what the real results are. And by the way, it's not just Bernie Sanders supporters who are saying it, even Joe Biden's campaign is saying, can we really trust this data? What's going on? So for all of you establishment types who might be watching this right now, thinking that we're wearing like our tin hats and we're ridiculous, keep in mind that Simone Sanders just recently went on cable news to talk about how these results are super fishy, and they are super fishy. Right now, Biden didn't do well in the state, it's pretty clear, but the results are fishy when you have supervisors from various counties saying that there are inconsistencies in the results. So it doesn't end there. Now, Kyle Kulinski brings this up, and I think he makes a really great point here, and this is what I worry about the most. He had written via Twitter, how do we know you didn't undercut Bernie in every single county? Like, it's now proven you did in Black Hawk County. What is your explanation for giving his support to Deval Patrick and Tom Steyer? And I think that question needs to be answered. So how did this so-called mistake happen? How did that happen? How did Deval Patrick end up with Bernie Sanders, the votes that should have gone to Bernie Sanders? Well, there are other counties that are now raising concerns. So let's go to the next one. Been looking through these Iowa caucus results and found some weird stuff. In this precinct, Indianola 2, we see Bernie and Warren with 0 votes in the first expression, while Steyer and Patrick have massive viable pulls. In the final expression, these numbers are switched. Okay, so he shared the evidence of what he had seen, and you can check it out for yourselves. And then he's like, you know what, let me double check because I wanna make sure I'm not spreading any type of false information. So here's what he also found. I scraped these numbers off of the New York Times, so at first I thought I may have transformed the data incorrectly somehow, but nope, you can see the same issue on the official Iowa Dems results page. So why do these inconsistencies exist? How is it that Sanders, who polled incredibly well in Iowa, and Warren, who also polled pretty well in Iowa, have 0 votes in this particular county. But then you look at someone like Deval Patrick or Tom Steyer, who did not poll well in the county, or in the state, I should say, somehow compiling more votes. It just doesn't make any sense.
The best explanation, I mean, considering Steyer and Deval Patrick are on the lower level again, like they were mentioning 0 votes, yet 2 of the 3 in the top 5, their votes were virtually switched. So it's one of those errors that this could be the explanation. No one knows because they don't know. So I'm just speculating because that's all anyone can come from right now. Is there was a flip, a direct flip, like, hey, the ones who are nearest to the bottom are getting the numbers that the people that are nearest to the top. Maybe some kind of computer error where some programming error flips things 100% or 180 on its own head. That's the best they've got right now.
I mean, that's the best excuse.
Yeah, it's the best excuse you've got right now, but we don't need excuses, we need the answer. So whoever, I was a mechanical engineer my first year of college. And so think of it this way, this is 1 year in. I knew already if there's something that goes wrong with your coding or what you're trying to do, I knew some computer engineers and all that stuff too. If there's something wrong with your coding, you don't just go, I don't know. People say, well, you wrote it.
Right.
You tell me what's wrong.
Exactly.
And if it's taking you, now that we're in the 3rd day of this, why don't you have the answer yet? You're a professional. You've been given this contract to put these results out, these very important results. You wanna be first in the nation, but you don't take it seriously enough to make sure your things work. This is elementary school type of mistakes. These are the kind of write-offs where you say, I don't know, I mean, somebody else figured it out for me. No, you're a big boy and girl, figure it out.
This is supposed to be a democracy. This is not a joke. This isn't a Miss America contest. This is to choose the Democratic nominee for the general election. This is what the Democratic establishment has supposedly been waiting for. This is what they think is incredibly serious. This is what they have been focusing on in an effort to beat Donald Trump. So what's going on here? Because it's becoming harder and harder to not jump to the conclusion of foul play. I'm just keeping it real, right? They haven't given us an explanation. And it's like one thing after the next, after the next. I don't understand how anyone, any state official can think this is acceptable. It is unacceptable. We need to know exactly why these mix-ups have happened, who made these mistakes. There should be a lengthy, detailed investigation. And more importantly, the Iowa State Caucus needs to, they need to stop releasing partial results. Why are they releasing partial results on the 3rd day? What is going on? We still don't have 100% of the results. And the results we do have are clearly flawed.
There's no answer to that. And again, maybe they think it looks worse. Like if we don't release anything, then it looks like we're not doing anything. No, it's worse if you consistently release bad information over and over again. And you didn't see it? Did they forget? Like, if you didn't see it, how do you think that people on Twitter are gonna miss it? They're gonna think, oh yeah, that makes sense, Deval Patrick. Oh yeah, and Steyer. Just what we thought would happen. This
is insane. This is insane. It's unacceptable. And even if these were honest mistakes, and it's becoming harder and harder for me to believe that, what it does to the mindset of voters is so incredibly damaging, and maybe that's what people want. But one thing that I will tell you, regardless of who you voted for in this primary, you cannot get discouraged and you can't give up. Okay, this is way too serious, and the election officials behind all of this need to be held accountable. There needs to be an investigation. We need to know what's going on, and we need to know who the real winner is. I don't trust any of these results right now. The story's still developing, and we'll give you updates as we get them and as we verify them. But as it stands now, I don't know what to believe in regard to the results of the Iowa caucus.
If you think about the mantra of the establishment portion of the Democratic Party, this entire build-up to this election season, the one mantra is said, we need to have someone who can beat Donald Trump. We need to have someone who can beat Donald Trump. We need someone who can beat Donald Trump. That's the tagline, not much about policy, but we need someone who can beat Donald Trump. You know what Donald Trump and his surrogates and everyone are doing right now? They're going, this is a great opportunity for us to tell everyone in the country how corrupt, misguided, and nefarious this party is.
Exactly, and
whether
he
it's
has
true
been
or
doing
not.
that.
Yeah, whether it's true or not, they don't care. They say that when something is blatantly in their face, the facts, they'll flip it on its head. So when there's a lot of uncertainty, what do you think they're gonna do next? So is this helping defeat Donald Trump? Is this providing any kind of confidence And people saying what Buttigieg said the other night when he gave the Obama voice, those former Republicans, like he pushed that one time. How are you gonna get former Republicans to become suddenly Democrats in this election cycle if you don't have any kind of confidence in your process?
That's exactly
and we just
right.
talked about how Donald Trump has subverted the process last cycle and is trying to do it again. Guess who that takes attention off of? The guy who's really doing it.
Exactly. And I just want to remind you of what the head of the Democratic Party in Iowa had to say 5 months ago. Here's Troy Price sharing how confident he is in this process.
Just know this. On February 3rd of 2020, caucuses will take place in this state. We will be first. And they will be, without a doubt, the most successful caucuses in our party's history.
I think this is the worst example of Iowa caucuses in this nation's history. I can't think of a time where it was worse.
If you think we didn't like the process before when it actually got results the night of, imagine after 3 days.
Look, we're gonna take a quick break. And we have other updates when it comes to Iowa. We'll share that with you and more when we return.
We hope you're enjoying this free clip from the Young Turks. If you want to get the whole show and more exclusive content while supporting independent media, become a member at tyt.com/join today. In the meantime, enjoy this free segment.
Welcome back to TYT, Anna and Jayar with you. Thank you for being patient with us, guys. Look, the Iowa story we just did is constantly being updated. We're doing our best to give you guys the most up-to-date news that's actually been fact-checked and verified, because as you can tell, there's all sorts of stuff flying around social media. We can't just irresponsibly give you something that we don't fact-check ahead of time. But thank you for bearing with us. A few member comments, and then we have 2 other Iowa stories I want to get to. From our member comments, we have Eclectic Miss Jelania writing in and saying the Iowa Democratic Party literally changed the results they announced. So it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a fact that someone is changing the results. Were the old results right? Are the new ones right? When will we have all the results? These aren't the questions of conspiracy theorists. These are people who want to be reassured that our democratic process is actually legitimate. And thank you, you put that so well. Yeah. I'm tired of being gaslit. Being called crazy. Oh, I mentioned that we were gonna cover that story on Twitter, and someone referred to my tinfoil hat. I want to find that guy and strangle him, right? Really wanting to protect the democratic process that we're supposed to be functioning under makes you a conspiracy theorist?
It's as simple as when in every other election cycle do the Iowa caucus results come out? That night. What's different this year? Should we all go?
What's different this year?
It's completely different.
The front runner is a leftist.
Yeah.
That's what's different.
And we go, it's completely different. Everything is not working the way it usually does, and everyone is. So the alternative is to say, "Oh, that's fine," and then what would you say?
That's what they want. They work real hard to manufacture consent, real hard. Speaking of which, you should watch my interview with Noam Chomsky tonight at 8:30 p.m. Eastern time on this show. All right, let's move on to the rest of the news. So Bernie Sanders supporters are questioning the results of the Iowa caucuses, and they should, because there have been inconsistencies that have been confirmed. And by the way, for all of you Biden supporters, turns out the Biden campaign has a similar concern, and they've been sharing it on cable news. So let me give you the details of what's been going on. So first, it started off with Kate Bedingfield, who's Biden's campaign manager. She said the following: if you have a process where you can't be confident that the results that are being reported are reflective of the votes that people cast last night and the process, that's a real problem. Now, Biden's senior advisor, Simone Sanders, also went on CNN to clarify it, but look, I'm gonna be real with you. Her interview ended up being a little bit of a disaster. Let's watch.
Is that what you're saying, that we should doubt the numbers that we see?
What I am saying is that on Monday night in Iowa, there were failures across the process when it came to the Iowa caucuses. There was confusion.
Do you believe the results?
The app that the Iowa
Do you
Democratic
believe
Party
the
used
data
did
that
not
you're
work.
seeing?
We
know
the
that,
backup
Simone.
phone
Do you
line that was
believe?
there
We
for
understand.
folks
Do you
to
believe
call
the
in.
data is
People
correct?
were waiting for 2 hours.
Why
and
can't
then
you
when
say
people
if
tried
the data
to
is
drive
correct
their
or
data to the
incorrect?
Iowa Democratic Party headquarters, they were unable to get that
Is
data
this
in there.
correct,
So
what
I'm
we're
saying
seeing?
is the
Simone,
foundation
is
of
this
this
correct?
process, the presidential preference reference cards are very important. So all our campaign has said, and what Kate Buttigieg said yesterday, and what I'm saying today, is we have to make sure we get this right.
Simone,
We
here's
have to
the
make
deal.
sure
I'm
that
going
the
to
data
interrupt
is
you when you're
accurate.
not answering the question.
Look, the interview did not go well, and talking over one another doesn't get anything accomplished. But I do agree with Simone Sanders on one thing, and that is these results can't be trusted. They can't be trusted for a number of different reasons. First off, there was the technological issue with the app, and they claimed, the Iowa Democratic Party claimed that the app was registering incorrect results. So that's issue number one. Okay, there was a coding problem. Issue number one. Issue number two, they haven't even released the full results yet. We're at, I believe, 82% of precincts reporting. That's what they've released so far. Why are they releasing little by little? Because what if people stop paying attention after a certain point? And then you think that someone is the winner of the Iowa caucuses, when in reality it ends up being someone else. I think that that's incredibly irresponsible. Third, as we learned today, there were significant errors in who delegates were given to in certain counties. So Black Hawk County was an issue. You have a supervisor for Black Hawk County raising concerns over on social media to show that delegates who were supposed to be given to Bernie Sanders ended up being given to Deval Patrick. And then the Iowa Democrats had no choice but to issue a correction on that. And then we saw similar inconsistencies with other counties. No, Simone Sanders isn't crazy for questioning the outcome or the results of the Iowa caucuses. Now, she clearly has a different agenda in mind. She wants to probably make the case that Biden did much better than he really did. But Biden didn't win in that state. We all know that. He didn't poll well, and he came in at fourth based on the faulty results that we have seen, and he's way low.
Yeah, in that train wreck of an interview, what you'll see is there was Simone Sanders trying to come in with an agenda to get a point across, and also to not say something else. It seems obvious. We're gonna start by, I've been saying this most of the day. I'm speculating here, but what it looks like is that you're like, okay, Simone, you gotta go on TV and talk about this, but don't admit that we think the results are faulty because we obviously underperformed. We don't want people to then say, the Biden campaign complains, says that's the reason why they underperformed in Iowa. That's seemingly the only objective from that section of the interview. So therefore, she can't answer the question and say, yeah, the results do seem a little bit off. Because then it'll lead then the anchor, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting her name right now.
Breonna Keeler.
Yeah, Breonna then will have to say, so is that why you guys underperformed? And you don't want the conversation to be about you underperforming. It's all politics. It's trying to make something good out of a little bit of a failure in the state. Now, in that objective, in doing so, you end up making yourself look worse. You can easily say, yeah, I mean, I think every campaign has said these results look a bit faulty. You know why? Because these results look a little bit faulty. Ask the Iowa Democratic Party. They said the same thing. They've changed it 3 times. It's very easy to answer that question. Then move on and say, but we're not complaining about our position if they ask you. Talk about, there's a simple question to answer. If you don't answer it, then you look like you're trying to hide something.
Totally, yeah. Like I said, she didn't handle that interview well. Honestly, I don't think she's been doing well on cable news interviews overall, but it's not about Simone Sanders. It's about a legitimate concern about the outcome of the Iowa caucuses and what's been recorded as the so-called results. The way that the results have been rolled out, the fact that there have been all sorts of weird inconsistencies with the results that have been rolled out. This is a huge problem, and we're messing with what's supposed to be a sound democratic process. When you in any way make people question the legitimacy of our democratic process, it's demoralizing and it discourages them from being politically active or taking part. And that's a huge problem. And there's also the concern that the election will be, purposely rigged in a way to prevent certain people like Bernie Sanders from winning. And look, I get it. People get upset when you mention that. They think that you're being a little conspiratorial. But just keep in mind that our government has no problem going into other countries to overthrow democratically elected leftist leaders because our country doesn't like leftist leaders. So what makes you think that they wouldn't try to do something like that in our own country?
Well, we've had questionable
conspiratorial thinking. Oh my God, I know a little bit about this country's history and what we've done in Latin American countries.
I mean, it's been a different way of having questions to our electoral process since forever in this country. Whenever it's excluding people, when it's making sure there's poll taxes or things like that to keep certain people disenfranchising voters, that was all old stuff, which still happens. But then now, in coming to today's thing, we have all these other issues with technology, with new systems, apps, all this are going in now, and you have to try to then navigate it and still say we have this very fair process. Sometimes things have to change, or maybe sometimes you don't change certain things. You can have that discussion without looking like you're complaining. And as soon as you throw in the, hey, you guys just complaining line, what are we complaining about?
But it's worse
person you're
than that.
supporting is actually probably winning. What is there to complain about?
No, but it's even worse than them. By the way, I am complaining.
Right.
I'm complaining. Go ahead and accuse me of complaining because that's exactly what I'm
can't
doing.
complain about a
You
faulty
should
system?
complain if you feel like your democracy is under siege by bad actors, okay?
Yep.
But the thing that I do take issue with is the accusation that if you raise concerns over a compromised system, right? Then you're no different than Alex Jones. You think that there's water that's making the frogs gay. You're crazy. No. This is based on what we have seen in this election, based on things we saw in the last election. And it's just way too convenient that every time there's an error, it negatively impacts a specific candidate. It's just too convenient, it's too strange. And if people actually care about beating Donald Trump or maintaining or protecting our democracy, this ain't it. This isn't how you do it.
And if you get challenged, this is the thing. If you get challenged because you're trying to get to the information about the situation and say, well, you tell me what went wrong. Honestly, I don't have the answer because no one does. You can easily flip. If someone wants to take the dumb approach, this is what many times Republicans do. They'll just say something that's flat out base and wrong, and the person who's challenged them has to come with an encyclopedia or be Google themselves and have this litany of information to dispute your just dumb claim. So just say, okay, you tell me what happened then.
Right.
You tell me what's going on in Iowa.
Totally.
If you're gonna challenge me about my obvious observation of what's not happening in Iowa, you tell me what's happening there.
And maybe it is just a coincidence that the people behind this faulty app have these deep-rooted ties with Pete Buttigieg to the point where one of the very public people who's involved in this app is married to someone who's working on Buttigieg's campaign. Maybe that's just a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist for finding that to be a little bit of an issue. But again, if you care about democracy, this is something that should concern you. And you should be equally outraged if it didn't impact Bernie Sanders, if it impacted a different candidate. Because you want legitimate results. You want the voters who took time out of their day, in most cases their entire day, to go out there and take part in this process. You want to make sure you protect what they felt, driven enough to go out and do.
It's what you call principles. If you have principles, you'll stand by them no matter what. If Bernie Sanders was getting shellacked in the state and Joe Biden was winning it, and then all this stuff went crazy, Bernie Sanders supporters, I can say for a certain percentage of us, the ones that I know, would say, man, this is making Bernie Sanders look bad. I don't want this to happen this way.
Right.
I want to win legitimately because you don't want people to be turned off by him based off of things that have nothing to do with his platform and his policy.
Well, let's move on to one other aspect of the Iowa caucuses that's unfortunately also infuriating, but if you know the details and the facts of what's really going on, it's good news for Bernie Sanders. So, media coverage of the Iowa caucuses has been fascinating, especially when you come across headlines like this one coming from ABC News. In Iowa entrance poll, Buttigieg shows broad-based appeal. Biden, not so much. Now let's talk a little bit about broad-based appeal, okay? Because if you look at numbers, you will see that there is one candidate who seems to really resonate with a broader base, and that person is not Pete Buttigieg. Now, as it stands right now, we don't know which of the candidates has won in the Iowa caucuses because the results have been faulty. There have been all sorts of inconsistencies and issues. But what we do know is that when it comes to young voters or people of color, they tend to vote for Bernie Sanders over Pete Buttigieg, and I have the receipts to prove it. So let's look at the issues first. So when it comes to the issue of healthcare, 57% of Iowa caucus voters supported a single government-run health insurance plan versus 38% opposed. Healthcare was by far the top issue out of 4 that were tested in the entrance poll. So does Pete Buttigieg want a single payer healthcare system?
Last I checked, no.
That's weird. Broad-based appeal, interesting. Okay, well, let's go to racial diversity. Among the comparatively few non-white caucus goers, Sanders won 43%. His competitors were clumped distantly. Buttigieg at 15% among non-whites, Biden at 13%, Warren and entrepreneur Andrew Yang 12% apiece. Okay, so Buttigieg not doing as well as Sanders when it comes to healthcare, not doing as well when it comes to people of color. Let's go to independents. Who did the best when it came to independents?
Independence is how we beat Donald Trump.
I know, I mean, like the Democratic Party pretends like they really care about the votes from independents, right? We gotta find a candidate that really resonates with those independent voters. Well, as in 2016, independents in the entrance poll tilted towards Sanders. A potential challenge for him in a closed primary ahead, those open to Democrats only. He won 34% of independents versus 20% of Democrats. But Biden did no better among Democrats, 18%, and Buttigieg, again, won 2 in 10 in both groups. So I don't understand where that headline comes from because it makes absolutely no sense.
Well, that's how it always works. I mean, they know people don't read past the headline. So a lot of times there'll be information in a piece that actually explains something that's completely opposite of what the headline says. But I mean, we need a headline just to say there's this level of, what is exactly the word they used? Oh, he shows broad-based appeal.
Right.
They didn't say diversity. I think it's a little different. It sometimes goes with these lawyerly terms. Broad-based appeal. So maybe because he's appealing what? The numbers were at 12% when it comes to non-white voters? 15 for Buttigieg? That's better than the 1% he was polling at nationwide. So you can, sorry.
It's amazing.
That was specifically with black voters, sorry. But so you can justify by saying, hey, he has a broader based appeal than we were reporting before. It's from 1% among black folks to 15 in Iowa. So it's false, but not 100% false. So you can kind of have a leg to stand on because and then people will leave going, oh man, Buttigieg is really picking up that diversity vote that we thought he didn't have.
But not really. When you have a candidate who's doing far better than him in that regard,
that's
how
why
do
you
you
ignore him.
And by the way, so maybe you can make the argument that the person who wrote that headline for ABC just didn't know the facts. Maybe they got their facts wrong. Except all the data that I read to you is from the actual article that has that ridiculous headline. So I don't know, the editor who wanted this headline, did that individual read Gary Langer's piece at all? Did he? Because I also want to note, oftentimes the reporters are not the ones who choose the headline, right? So the editors typically sign off on the headline. I don't know for sure if that's how it works at ABC News, but that's typically the case. So if that is the case with ABC, that editor should be fired because he or she didn't even read the article. Has no idea what's in it.
Well, I mean, again, these are the parts of it that gives them an out. We put the graphic up one more time. That subheadline, younger, more liberal and issue-focused voters pulled for Sanders. See, we mentioned how Sanders is actually doing well with younger, more liberal and issue-focused voters. They said so in the headline. It's just, I think where it maybe comes down to, at least when it comes to this particular headline, is everyone wants, this is their mindset. Everyone wants to hear about how's Biden doing, how's Buttigieg doing. That's their approach. And they're like, well, let's tell them how Biden and Buttigieg are doing. No one really cares about hearing about Sanders. So they went with who they figure are the notable names in this story. And that's all they think matters. It may not be purposeful exclusionary, but then they're like, oh, well, how's Biden doing? Biden's doing badly, we have to put that in the headline. Hey, Buttigieg is doing better than expected, we have to put that in the headline. Sanders is doing well like we expected him to, so let's not say much, maybe just a light gray headline underneath it.
Look, maybe you're right, and maybe I'm just super pessimistic and too jaded at this point, at this juncture in my career. I feel that all of this is intentional and malicious.
But it's not even an excuse. What I get floated as their possible reason, that's bad.
Yeah.
You're supposed to provide the story, not tell your readers what you think, or your viewers what you think they should hear.
Right.
Tell them the story.
Well, when we come back from the break, we will switch gears a little bit and give you some updates from what happened after Trump's State of the Union address. There were some protests that you should know about. And then later on, we'll give you updates on the impeachment vote. We'll be right back.